So, saw on social media an interesting little comment the other day, just like a day or two ago, and it was, Steve Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin. They struggled at USC, but now they're finding their groove. They're succeeding. Obviously, this especially applies to Sark at Texas. And Lincoln Riley's stumbling around. Is there just something in the water in LA, or something about USC that's kind of holding things back? Interesting question, provocative question. Ethan, I think the right point of emphasis would simply be: has Chad Bowden put that issue to bed? Is this an unresolved matter? How would you come at that particular question? That talented coaches didn't make it at USC; they're doing a lot better elsewhere. Has Chad Bowden kind of resolved this already? Or do we, is there something about Lincoln Riley that perhaps is kind of perpetuating that kind of question and why people are asking it?
I think that there is a massive culture difference between USC and an SEC school, and I don't think that culture difference is going away anytime soon. And I don't think that it's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's just how it is. I think that LA is just a different atmosphere than anywhere in, the southeastern United States is. And I think that some people step up to that challenge and some people are just really not cut out for it. I think that, but I don't think that it's necessarily a set in stone thing. Like, I think Lincoln Riley may not have been necessarily cut out for it at the beginning, but it's something that you can grow into. And I think that he's made a lot of the right decisions to try to grow into that role. We kind of have talked about how great Lincoln Riley's situation was at Oklahoma and how he was kind of grandfathered into just this wonderful situation, had wonderful relationships with, basically everybody that he needed to have great relationships with at Oklahoma. He was, Bob Stoops' like successor, protege, whatever you want to call him. And then, coming into LA, there's a lot of prominent high school football. We've talked about this a lot in recruiting, a lot of prominent high school football coaches that relationship wasn't automatic. It's had to develop over time. And, Chad Bowden has had a lot more success with that than Lincoln Riley has had historically. I think that, yeah, it just goes back to a cultural difference. I read an interesting article that talked about Lane Kiffin recently going on a podcast and talking about how he would walk around campus in LA and at USC and walk around the city in LA and just kind of never be recognized by anybody. And, nobody really recognized him, cared about who he was. There was a lot of students that would just pass by him without even making a second glance. Like, this is their head football coach, one of the most important people at their university, even to their like student life. You would think, like, their like experience. If your football team's good, that's like an invaluable experience that you can't really have any other phase of life. Being in college and having a great college football team is, it's one of the greatest experiences I think that anybody can have. I mean, I was at USC in 2022 when they were in competition for a college football playoff berth, and it's not an experience that you can really replace with anything else in the sports world. It's wonderful. And so and then he kind of expanded on that whole thing and just kind of, and he's a member of the SEC now, so you can kind of take anything positive that he says about the SEC with a little bit of a grain of salt, but, expanded on the whole, it just means more, and it just seems to mean more to people out here and whatever. And obviously that's going to be just how it is. Cultural differences, LA, the southeastern United States, college football is a lot bigger there. There's a lot more going on in LA. I'm beating a dead horse by bringing up that point. Basically, everybody knows about it. I don't need to bring it up. It's not a new idea. But I do think that some people are more cut out for the challenge that LA poses. I think that Pete Carroll is a great example. Pete Carroll has coached in a lot of challenging cities, USC, LA being one of them, and made a lot of difference on and off the field in those cities. And, Seattle's a decently big city. He's now in Vegas, which is another city with a lot of reputation, a lot of challenges, with a franchise that has a lot of reputation and challenges, and he's not running from that. He never has. And I think that because of some of the successes he's had at USC, I would expect him to have a lot of success in Vegas as well. I think some of these other coaches, honestly, even though, Texas fans and Ole Miss fans are probably talking about college football 24/7 and, probably talking about him 24/7. Some of that attention is also positive. They love college football over there. So, there's no, if Ole Miss goes 4-8 this year, people will still sell out every game. They'll still show up. They'll show their support. They'll show, positive attention towards the program. Very similar. Texas is a little bit different, a little bit less, supportive, but it's just kind of how it historically has been in the SEC. And I think that just works better for some people. And I think that just not only the culture of the football program, but the culture of the surrounding town, the culture of the college campus, it works better for people. And I think people either, adjust or they find a better situation. And I think that's what it comes down to. I don't think that, there's anything bigger that USC wasn't doing to support them. I don't think that, they were phoning it in at USC. I think that both of them are very good football coaches and they tried. And I think that it was just more difficult than maybe they were ready to handle at that point in time. It's also later in their careers. They have a lot more experience. They've been mentored by a lot more people at this point. So I just think that it's kind of a right place, right time thing. And they're at the right place and at the right time. So that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, I mean, both Sark and Kiffin, they had to go to the Nick Saban rehab facility. They got coached up. They were coached on how to coach, and then they came out on the other side of that ready. So it's not as though Sark and Kiffin were fully formed head coaches, anything but when they were at USC. They needed to go through some tough times. They needed to do things that, frankly, they should have done earlier in their careers, but didn't. The other thing to note here, Ethan, and I'm like your opinion on this. This part of it seems also pretty clear cut to me that, Pat Hayden, Lynn Swann, USC had some bad athletic directors. So it's not as though, everything was just put in place for the football program to succeed. No, there were several years of bad decisions, bad executive maneuverings, like Cliff Kingsbury coming aboard as offensive coordinator, but then he goes to the NFL, not USC and Lynn Swann not being able to retain him. And it's really interesting to wonder, what if Cliff Kingsbury had coached at USC several years before he joined Lincoln Riley's staff? Not that was like the representative example, but it's just one of many, right? Pat Hayden making the decision to hand the keys to Clay Helton, before Christian McCaffrey and Stanford blew the doors off the Trojans. Pat, maybe you should have just waited until that Pac-12 championship game to see if old Clay was really up to it a decade ago. So, Ethan, to me, a large part of this is the athletic director position, and USC didn't begin to rebound until Mike Bohn hired Lincoln Riley. So, a skilled AD making an elite hire that we didn't see under Hayden or Swann. And then Jen Cohen picking up the pieces, getting Chad Bowden aboard and reconstructing things. To me, the athletic director chair is a big reason why USC didn't really hit the mark. It's not just this nebulous, there's something in the water in LA thing. No, there are concrete explanations for why this happened.
Right. I think that you can't say either of these coaches were in a perfect situation when they were hired. And I think it's evident in kind of the ways that both of them ended up being let go. I mean, you go back to Lane Kiffin, he was fired on the tarmac. That's obviously not the most graceful way to let go of a head football coach. And then, when Sark was let go, all these personal details came out about, his struggles with alcoholism, and none of that really should have ever hit the public. I don't think. I think that that's a matter that they should have dealt with a little bit more privately. So there was a lot of different issues going on between the head coach position and everybody above that in the AD position and all that stuff. So it's, I don't think we can look back and blame them for those years of struggle. And I don't think that we should be wishing any ill will towards them. Obviously, we should be hoping to compete against them and beat them if we ever come against them. And, whether it's like you said, when the Big Ten and SEC seem to inevitably make this partnership and play each other in the regular season, or if it's, we play them in the playoffs at some point. But yeah, I wouldn't really put it on either of them. It's not really either of their faults for